Hello, I'm Francine. I like to explore VR chat worlds, and I love posting online photos of the worlds that I find. Sometimes the worlds are fantastical, sometimes they're realistic, and sometimes they're downright strange. It's a diverse platform. But I'm here today because I want to talk about a particular series of strange ones that has had me completely enamored now for over 6 years. It's a small indie series called Messages from Within. Welcome to virtual reality. I hope you enjoy your stay. So, back in 2020, after the end of the world came upon us and life more or less ground to a halt for many people, I purchased a Valve Index to pass the time and get my mind off the state of the world. I began to play around with the various titles that were available for the system. Half-Life Alyx, Beat Saber, Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades, all the various tech demos from various companies, and anything else that I could get my hands on to experience the world of virtual reality. I wanted to see all that I could, and I was enamored with the unique ways that I could interact with the virtual spaces contained within them. VRChat was an obvious download, being a free game that anyone could play, and I managed to find some friends to talk with and actually socialized a bit during the isolating times that we were living in. VR was mind-blowing at the time because of the level of immersion that it offered. I could do all sorts of activities that were too expensive or too time-consuming to do in real life. It let me play with things in my hands. It let me experience how vast something can seem when you're surrounded by the world, not just viewing it through a tiny little window. It was a lot of fun, and eventually I beat all the games that I had and experienced what I thought I could and had my fill talking with friends in VRChat's many hangout worlds. But then I discovered something that would take my love of the virtual world and kind of kick it into overdrive. This photo, posted to 4chan's X Paranormal board back on May 12, 2019, is the original image that would spur the fandom of The Backrooms. Many of you are probably aware of the lore that surrounds it. The legendary description that was added to the image was nothing more than a creative reply to the post, but it helped to expand its mythos from some random odd image to something more sinister. If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly generated, segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. I had come across this photo with the green text response appended to it sometime in 2020, and I immediately fell in love with the idea of this physical space that had part of a mundane horror element to it. It glorified the unique aspects of everyday life, and with the pandemic raging, it showed how a constructed world, vast and empty, can be a great creepy setting to be creative in. Creators like Kane Pixels, Async Research, Andy R Animations, GeoDio26, and Sobog were all personal favorites of mine. All of them began to make content surrounding the Backrooms, either by directly trying to expand the lore of their existence from this single 4chan post, or trying to extrapolate with different locations and moods that still held that unique, liminal feeling. I fell in love with the entire concept and began to explore VRChat worlds that utilize similar tags. I looked at post-apocalyptic worlds like the one that I'm chilling out in right now. I searched for desolate places, rundown places, eerie places, and sometimes just straight horror maps. There were winners and losers all over. VRC is a creative platform, and anyone can join at any skill level and with any motivation. But one day I did my usual searches, once again for liminal maps, and something came up that piqued my interest. The Firmament by J.R. Oppenheimer. So I immediately noticed the dark and oppressive tone of the screenshot that went with it, as well as the green tinting of the light, and the massive and almost impressive architecture on display, backed by a pitch-black skyline. I had that same feeling wash over me when viewing it as I did when seeing the Backroots image. I needed to visit this place. Opening the page description, I saw that it was part of a series, Messages from Within. It was listed as part 4, so I went to the creator, J.R. Oppenheimer, and I looked for the beginning. You Won't Pass These Gates was listed as part 0. The same general vibe was on display with the lone bus stop, the wall seeming to stretch on to infinity, and the dark lighting with that sickly yellow-green tint backlit by a dark sky. Noticing all of the other similarly oppressive thumbnails, I wasted no time and hopped in and began my explorations. It quickly became one of my favorite series of maps on the platform and made me realize that VRC could be more than just a space to converse with friends. It could be a space to explore. So Messages from Within is a series of 8 worlds by J.R. Oppenheimer that all share a loose narrative through line from one entry to the next. The canonical order of these is listed in the description of each world. As I mentioned, Part 0 is You Won't Pass These Gates. Part 1 is When the Epiphanies Began. Part 2 is Vile, spelled exactly as shown with all capital letters and underscores beneath each one. Part 3 continues this unique naming structure with Their World. Part 4 goes back to a more traditional title, The Firmament. Part 5 is Shape Collector. Part 6 is Convergence. And finally, Part 7 is Atrophy. As of today, these are the only maps that have been released for this series, although it's hard to tell if the series is finished or on hold. Part 0 was released in July of 2021, and Part 7 was released in September of 2024. While it's been a fair bit since Part 7's release, there is a noticeable gap of 2 years between Parts 5 and 6, so it may just be on hiatus for the time being. I don't know Oppenheimer's life or motivation with the series, so I'll do my best not to speculate. Regardless, I'll be trying to go through and explain what's physically happening with these maps and the various themes and messages that I'm getting from them. The images you're seeing are the ones provided by J.R. Oppenheimer themselves and are the shots you will see upon looking up the map in VRC's database. These are the official title screens or thumbnails depending on how you want to philosophize a game screenshot. One thing that I do want to point out and will discuss later is that out of the 8 maps, only one entry, Shape Collector, appears to have an official title render and similarly is presented with friendly text and pleasing colors. All the other ones are some form of green or gray and are presented as an unedited screenshot of the map itself. Beginning at the beginning of it all, though, is You Won't Pass These Gates is both a mundane start and admittedly not the best entry in the series for me. It's good at setting the scene for the story about to unfold, though. You spawn in at the location of the screenshot and are presented with this oppressive wall and lone bus stop. On the side is written, "You now have arrived at Gateway 1A. The firmament is closed. There will be no visitors beyond this point." Ominous, for sure. Already there's a reference to the firmament and its closure, but besides that, we're left to explore and discover more. This is a fairly normal start to a VRChat puzzle map. The door is closed and we need to open it. This first one's pretty easy and is a good way to introduce us to how this world will play out. Green means go is written on the inside of the bus stop with a few subtle arrows to alert us to a button hidden below it. Pressing it, the light above the door swaps from red to green, and the button to the left of it is now active. "Hello?" it says. Pushing the button presented slowly lowers this massive door to the seemingly endless wall, and as it lowers, we find out that behind this wall in the middle of nowhere is another wall. But this time it's got arches in front of it, running horizontally in a strange triangle pattern embedded into the ground. Now the puzzles are up to us to determine. One notable thing is that back on the bench of the bus stop there appeared to be a strange white cube item. Picking it up, we notice that the triangle and dots match up with the triangle on the ground and the arches. We have a path we need to follow. Notice the subtle noises we hear. This isn't a silent world. The cold wind is constantly blowing past us. This is a desolate place, and this truly is depicted as the middle of nowhere. Are we meant to be here? Is this an accident? Have we been tasked with this for some reason? Why, when opening the door, did the tool text say hello like it did? What's the firmament? What do they mean by no visitors? They're subtle questions, but they're insidious. With nothing but a dark sky and a blank wall, it's hard to think about anything else. All we can really do for now is solve this puzzle and see what lies beyond. The light is green now. It's time to open the second door. Is anybody out there? The second one calls out. We're met with another large field, another large wall, and a set of 4 monoliths with an almost evil red interior glow. It feels like we're uncovering a deep tomb and we're being watched and judged for what we're doing. But it all feels artificial. There's nobody manning the stations, or if they are, the silence gives off almost an inhuman vibe. With another wall is another puzzle to solve. A lone square block in the center with vaguely blobby shapes and a single pointed edge pointing in what seems like random directions. With enough trial and error, it's probably possible to either stumble across this by accident or figure out that these blobs are meant to be arrows of a sort. There's invisible sections we can interact with by following the points out into the void. I'll admit I'm not a fan of this design, but it does continue to build this oppressive atmosphere that we're in a place we shouldn't be. It's not designed for us or seemingly for anyone. Tooltips are written out for each of these 3 sections as well. The first box is 6, 2, 12, 24, 11, 18. The second is 2 and 12. And finally, the third is 22, 8, 6, 25, 8, 11, and 13. The numbers are a strange addition to the tooltip. Each one is separated by dashes, but no further information is given. And the light above the door is now green. We're good to move on. Approaching the door, we're treated to the accompanying message. You have to find me, please. We open the door and find a spinning blue cuboid, very out of place with its bright color and movements in this otherwise desolate and dark space. As we approach, we can hear wails and unnatural noises emanating from it. This is not a friendly shape. And finally, clicking on it, we're suddenly locked out. Then we click on the gate again and get transported again. Then again and again. And when we finally attempt the initial door, something has changed. In the world with a vast emptiness, there's a hostile force keeping us away. It feels as though the world itself doesn't want us here. And so ends part 0. What jumps out at me when exploring this world is that despite its low-budget visuals and limited colors, it instills this sense of foreboding, this essence of malice towards the player. The world isn't silent, there's wind here, there's ominous noises coming from the pillars and from the cuboid itself. It's not brazenly empty, there's a uniformity to the structures which seem to extend beyond the horizon. There's a reference to the firmament and later a direct cry of help from the world itself. And finally there's those strange numbers hidden in plain sight. I was stuck on those for a while, trying to figure out what they could possibly mean. Looking at them, they struck me as someone hiding a message in numbers. A cipher, as far as I could tell. So the first thing I did was that I went to Google and just found out different common cipher techniques. After the absolute bare minimum of research, I found plenty of examples of numbers being translated to English letters through a standardized pattern. Apparently, this is called the A1Z26 cipher, named as such because the cipher assigns A to be 1, B to be 2, and so on until Z equals 26. Once running through that cipher, we get a seemingly garbled mess of letters. I had to give this a minute to parse through what it could possibly be trying to say and was wondering if I was just off track or with the process or if I even used the right cipher. I was drawn to the middle 2 numbers in the combination, figuring that there was a fairly limited set of letters that could combine together to make an actual intelligible word. So I pulled up the cipher techniques and tried to rationalize what the translated mess really could be saying. One translation technique, similar in style to the A1Z26 cipher, is called a Caesar cipher. This is basically just a way to substitute one set of letters for another, usually by shifting every single letter by a set amount, with the key of how many letters to shift and in what direction. It can be a pain to punch through manually, but with the power of modern technology, it can be fairly trivial to brute force. Pulling up an online translator tool, I entered in our weird 2-letter word and ran it through stepwise until it gave me an actual English word. 19 characters shifted, and we come up with is. This seemed like a logical in-between word, so I went to the other two and used the same shift count. Doing the same shift count with the first and the third set of letters, we get misery and comfort. Two very different words, but standard English ones nonetheless. Misery is comfort. This obviously isn't a happy secret. The world itself seems to want to keep someone or something in and isn't appreciative of us trying to get it out. It needs whatever it is in there to stay in there. It can't change. It can't open. It wants to get our help, but at the same time, it's pushing us away. It's not even obvious if the various messages are from the same source, but they're conflicting nonetheless. Just like our secret phrase. Not many VRChat worlds even bother to label individual tooltips like this, and when they do, they're usually used for informing the player of an action that's about to take place when they're used. Open door, teleport to hub, activate trigger, click yes, click no. This world, however, is fine with placing custom text in there to give the idea that either we're speaking to someone in the world, or the world is speaking directly to us. It even goes so far as to obscure a message under not one, but 2 different ciphers. I shouldn't have to say that for a map made for free and a platform meant to talk with strangers, this is almost unheard of. The map has secrets buried in it, and they're not meant to be easy to understand. It's a simple map with a simple start, but it's a great way to open the story for the player, and it's only the beginning. It goes much deeper from here. We're about to experience some epiphanies. When the epiphanies began starts us in a very dark and very purple room, in a small house or maybe even a large apartment. The stairs to the upper floor are blocked off by various boxes, the curtains are closed, and there's a rather creepy piano tune that comes in and just plays. To me, it looks like someone that either has just moved into the place or is just about to move out. The furniture is still up, but there's little in the way of decorations or pictures hung up, and we only see more boxes as we explore the tiny space. The outside is visible through a few windows, but there's nothing really to see. It's pitch black. Nothingness is about all that you can make out. We enter the kitchen, and a chair is knocked backwards, a hole lit up near it as if inviting you to fall in. With nothing better to do, we leap and land in a similarly purple-colored hallway with orange lights and an ominous doorway in front of us. Proceeding through it, we're met with a large bottomless pit and a small ledge that allows us to travel around the edge. Looking up, it appears that there's no ceiling to this place, and the buildings all seem to be crumbling and floating away. In this area, there's 2 doorways and a gated archway that blocks our path. The left room is another strange area with another bottomless pit with large diamond-like entities floating around us. At the end of all of this is a platform with a menu, showing a VRChat mirror and some basic world sound settings. It's something for the casual explorer to rest and converse near. A staple for VRC maps, but not really relevant to the story right now. Ominously, in one of the corners, a diamond structure appears to not be operational. It's dark and slumped into the corner of the room. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's just temporarily off. There's no way to interact with any of these entities, so we may never know. Going back to the initial pit room, the other doorway leads us to a room with 2 large cubes, an opening on the opposite wall, and what appears to be doors placed upside down flush with the ceiling. We've definitely crossed the line from the initial house to something resembling a restless dream, probably a nightmare. Around the corner, we're met with this terrifying creature picture. Clicking on him reveals that there's a way up there. We can't jump in this world, and there's no obvious way to get up there via a teleport or staircase or something, so we hit a bit of a wall coming from a narrative perspective. Stumbling around and checking every nook and cranny, there's actually a new thing that's appeared that wasn't there before. Most likely updated after our picture interaction in the diamond room. With this menu and the mirrors, there's now a fourth button hidden beneath the others. Realize. Pressing this button has no obvious effect for now. If we wander back again to the room with the impossible ledge, however, there's now ramps that lead up to it. Walking up, there's another menu with the tooltip, I'm going to tell you something dire. The day you left, the epiphanies began. We walk out to see the archway previously blocked is now open, and another message from this voice in the world, and the gate slammed shut. We walk through a stairwell, another message, and the clock turned backwards. Up the stairs, and the days grew stranger. Up again, and the nights grew sleepless. And the thoughts grew fearful, and the dam started cracking, and my brain began rotting, and my body grew numb, and everything was different when the epiphanies began. We finally reach the roof of this structure, and we see a bed in the number 2102, and are surrounded by a vast sea of orange nothingness. And that's it. We awake from the dream. This chapter has a lot more going on with it than the initial one. There's more explicit text, there's the code at the end, the surreal imagery is pushed further, and the environment grows a lot more hostile. This map feels more like a fever dream than the first, and it's more explicit in this messaging. Even the beginning area, that seems somewhat normal, albeit a bit stylized, but everything changes once you decide to follow the rabbit down the hole and go to Wonderland. There's a few things that are special about this one that I feel elevate it from the first. The map goes a lot deeper than the surface level puzzle solving that the first one employed, and there's a certain hidden nature to a lot of the puzzles that are present. The gate being closed is the obvious obstacle, but the process to get there is anything but straightforward and linear. You need to wander into one room, interact with a seemingly random picture, wander into another, go into what is essentially a settings menu to find a secret, and then wander back to that same first room to find it has changed just enough to unlock a platform for some reason. Only then is the gate actually open for us. It's dream logic taken literally. The solution is designed to be accidentally discovered. You're not finding this on purpose. It forces you to wander and take in the chilling environment. It makes you see and consider all of the entities in the world and why they're there. It wants you to not just solve a puzzle, but explore and take in the world while doing it. And then, of course, there's the poem at the end that's written on the walls. And the gates slammed shut. Sounds familiar, right? In the previous part, we watched those gates slam shut ourselves. This appears to be told from the same perspective. It sounds like the writers lost at sea without their mysterious person that left them. It could be my own bias, but it sounds like they're suffering from the abandonment. Trying to make sense of this with the first part, I see a relationship that was recently ended. Our protagonist was just trying to get inside someone's circle, potentially just to be close to them, and then was shut out suddenly and violently. They're being isolated. The rest of the poem after the gates line just shows a slow decay into this feeling of isolation and numbness. It's analogous to somebody previously in a relationship dealing with a bad breakup and is spiraling into depression. I'm no stranger to the feeling. It's awful. It's not something that I think anyone would want to go through, and I have a feeling that this emotional state leads us to the next map. Vial starts the same as the previous two in that the beginning location is a familiar structure, this being an underground or covered tunnel for a road. Both directions stretch out into an unseeable black void, and we're unfortunately stopped from traveling too far down either direction. A chilling, bassy electronic soundscape creeps into the fray, and the only logical direction ahead is through the small doorway to the next room. We head through a cramped, oddly shaped hallway before we enter our first of many terrifying rooms, the bridge to the slated hall. The bridge is over a seemingly bottomless pit, and looking into the distance, we can see that it's not a special one. Dozens of other lit doorways are sprinkled around to show that there's bridges connecting between this endless black chasm that we find ourselves in. We're also poised on top of a narrow stairway that snakes down from the open door and to the bridge itself. Any trips or slips here are certainly going to be deadly, and the darkness helps to obscure that the intended route is just wide enough to make me nervous. After carefully climbing down the stairs and crossing the lone bridge, we can see that the slats we need to walk through are offset at a unique angle. It's enough that you can only really see where it leads to as you get closer to the entry of them, and they're narrow enough to turn what would be a vast opening into a cramped hallway. The exits on the other side lead to another room, with another nerve-wracking path that leads around a bottomless black pit. Stairs take us to a small, illogically placed doorway. It's hard to describe how perilous these paths immediately feel. I want to keep my back to the wall as I shuffle around the sides as if the pit is going to suck me into nothingness at any moment. Almost mockingly, the next room is another bridge, but just wide enough to walk across. A single light on the wall and another on the path is all we really have to navigate this narrow space, and it almost feels like walking across an oversized balance beam. It's over quickly, though, as the next doorway leads us to another hallway, this time with no obvious bottomless pits. There are slits in the walls on the right that break up the odd archways, but nothing is really visible through them, and there are rooms on the opposite side that lead to pitch black darkness. We could go in fairly easily. I just don't like the darkness. The end of the hallway leads to what almost resembles a common space. There's concrete columns, a reflection pool-like indent where only a yellow light shines through, accompanied by what would be an opening or a skylight, also covered by the neon yellow. Even a developer menu sits here offering a mirror and seating. The black slits we saw previously are now revealed to be openings into another black void. An open ledge dares us to stare out into the nothingness, only contextualized by the small openings of light produced by those same slits in the concrete. Not wanting to stay in this eerie place long, we make our way around the corner and climb the long staircase to a surprisingly well-lit room for this map. But the room still seems to be oppressive. It's reminiscent of an old square Roman court system or even a coliseum, and apparently we're tonight's trial or entertainment. Walking up to the presentation stage, a button is presented to us. Yielding only an ominous accept tooltip, we press it and are whisked away from there and placed in front of a new message. What did you dream? Feels like I'm still dreaming, personally. Turning around, we're met with another chasm of darkness, and for a moment it seems like an unceremonious end to this weird adventure. No obvious path presents itself. There's no exit to this space. At least that's what it seems like until we peek just over the edge. Another path below is visible from the faint light. We just have to jump off, but not slip entirely. We leap, and we land, in a similar hallway to the one above, only with a new hole in the floor, leading somewhere unknown. With nowhere else to go, we jump again. And then we're deposited into something reminiscent of a parking tower. The low ceilings, thick columns, and piping that seems to lead to nowhere all give this liminal impression of being where we shouldn't stay. There's always a way out, however. The lighting in the space lets you see almost everything, but it's hard to escape the feeling of being watched or followed in this space. There's too many places for someone to hide in the shadows or duck behind a column. Its only saving grace is that there seems to be no doorways or slopes in or out of this location, just the hole in the ceiling that we fell in. After wandering a long while, we finally do stumble upon a column that's mismatched to the other. It's longer, and an opening reveals a staircase leading down into a dark hallway. Taking it, we descend into a room almost opposite of what we just left. From the vast car park to a series of cramped hallways with stairs and doorways leading all over. It almost feels like being a rat lost in a maze. Stairs lead up to rooms, which lead to ledges above other rooms, and the other stairs lead to yet more rooms, and we end up back where we started. There's red lights, there's more rooms, there's more stairs. We end up back where we started again. There's a corner, a gated doorway, more rooms, more stairs, more backtracking, more of the same insanity, as everything just starts to feel overwhelming. Are we lost? Are we not meant to be here? Is this it? Thankfully, there's a doorway that appears in a seemingly odd, random section of the wall. We finally found a way out of this torture. But then, unceremoniously, the map just ends. A lit path leads to a platform surrounded by darkness. Staring into the nothingness, we can make out vast monoliths lined up in the union stretching out before us, the scale of which rivals skyscrapers. We are offered a stairway down to see these monoliths up close, but there's nothing more to explore besides more vast darkness. The nightmare is over, for now. So, Vile is the first map that appears to be angry. Not angry with the player, not even at the protagonist specifically, but just atmospherically. The map is not a product that feels like it's meant to be played and enjoyed by the average user. It's not meant to be understood. It almost gives off this air that it wasn't even designed by humans, not directly at least. It just feels like a raw representation of hatred and agony. Even the name of the map, Vile, implies this emotion. It's the embodiment of disgust. I'd almost argue it feels similar to stepping into a piece of vent art. Every space is either vast and empty or tight and claustrophobic. We regularly travel from sparsely lit enclosed spaces to ones that are monolithic but tend to not allow much room for true exploration. The structure is simply not built for the player. Yet in some spaces, that raw hatred and cold, inhuman structure design really leads us to places that feel like they verge on familiarity. The first obvious one to me is the space that looks like an older Roman court. We enter at one end and a platform rests on the other. Above us in an unreachable area are rows of what could be interpreted as seating. That mixed with the text of "accept" on the button are an interesting combination. Without really saying a single word or showing a single face, we're shown to be on trial, dragged silently through the courtroom and told to accept something that we don't understand. This action is the only one that leads us to a room with direct specific text. What did you dream? In isolation, it's really hard to form a story here, but when looking back to when the epiphanies began, it's obvious to draw the connection between the messages on the walls there and the ones presented here. The protagonist is haunted by something and they're being interrogated either externally or, I would argue, internally. Something happened that broke them, and it all ties back to the walls of Chapter 0. The picture that's forming to me is that our protagonist, our player character, has lost someone, either by them voluntarily leaving or potentially involuntarily leaving, and is desperately trying to get them back, or at least to regain their sanity. There's someone that was there, and now they're gone, and it's taking a toll on their mental state. They're trying to remember their dreams. The different spaces contextualized with this mindset make sense to me. The ending where the gray monoliths watch over us as we're trapped on a lit platform are just distant people that don't know the spotlight that we've put ourselves in. The nonsensical claustrophobic maze is us trying to escape our own pressures in life. The empty car park, probably just a nod to the liminal architecture, could be seen as us transitioning wildly from one location to the next, but I feel like it captures this wandering mental state perfectly. Backing up a second, the bridges and hallways give this feeling of knowing something is coming up, but not being able to really see what it is for the anxiety of the immediate space. A narrative formed for me when we began in the tunnel in a space that, while dark, feels familiar and relatively safe. We progress immediately into dangerous spaces that wind in such a way that you can't really see what's next until the trial comes up. Then everything derails and we get lost so quickly it's hard to make out what's next, and if there even is a next. The world goes from dangerously linear to chaotically opaque, not wanting to show you how to progress. It's a unique feeling and definitely helps with the sense of despair and wandering I feel the author is trying to impart in this work. It's what makes this one of my favorites in this entire series. To go off on somewhat of a small tangent before we move on to the next chapter, I do want to talk about a vibe that I was getting while exploring this specific map. This doesn't have a lot to do with the Messages from Within series, but I can't help but compare the visuals in these to the maps of the game Naissance. Excuse my butchering of the word, it's French, I'm not. Or the manga Blam. In both the game and the manga, the protagonist is stuck endlessly wandering some form of superstructure, bleak and gray. In Naissance, you're trying to find your way out of this place that's not designed for humans. The origin of this structure is entirely unknown to the player, it's just there. There's gray architecture everywhere, and darkness tends to overpower light in most of the playtime. It's there, but it doesn't care if you are or not. Vast spaces are interspersed with cramped hallways, and every step feels like you're on the verge of death. In Blam, there's a bit more characterization going on outside the world itself, with the protagonist Kiri searching far and wide for the so-called net terminal gene. But there's still this overall story that brings him through a similarly impressive and endless superstructure. This one is built from machines that were programmed to infinitely construct for one reason or another. The meaning of the structures are lost to time, and their friendliness to the humans and other entities that live within the manga's various strata is obviously low. It's a desolate place. And in all three media, there's the sense of wandering, not from curiosity, not from boredom, but from survival. It's not a mindset of enjoyment, it's from desperation of trying to get to the next area, get to the next thing. Vile manages to impart this feeling right here. Without saying a single word, it's hauntingly beautiful. Their World is the next map in the series, and we're placed into a map that's almost antithetical to that of Vile. A very distinct warbling can immediately be heard, and we're in a brightly textured and concrete room. A dev note indicates that this world is meant to be experienced with sound, and looking around we can see that there's a potted plant and a doorway here. There's signs of humanity. Proceeding through, we're met with a familiar bottomless pit and a lot of blind corners. The stark unfriendliness of the structure is still present here, but its anger is almost subdued compared to that of Vile. Walking a bit, it's obvious the warbling, now music, is being emitted from a very specific direction, and it's also obvious that we're placed inside a grid of spaces. Unlike all the previous entries, this is more of an open space to explore, and similar to Part 0, this map is more of a puzzle than it is a story. Listening carefully, we do follow the source of the strange music, and it leads us to the center of this grid. Looking around, we might spot a familiar face. The floating diamond from Epiphanies is here. It seems to sit in silence, unmoving and monolithic. Without much other direction to go off, we wander around until we're met with a gate flanked by two lit triangles. To our left, in the next room, a pyramid spins around. If we walk up to it, a simple message is shown. Collect shapes to access the maintenance tunnel. We now have our goal. Picking up the pyramid, we're greeted with a rather happy success noise, and turning back to the locked doorway, we can see that the shape has now changed to a square. It's time to explore. It's time to collect more shapes. Before we dive too deep into the themes and the story of this one, I want to point out the unique framing of the map's thumbnail for a second. It looks weird, right? It doesn't seem like it's part of the same world that we just played. It's bright, sure, but what's with the weird black crosses? But look closer for a second. It's taken from above, in what is traditionally an out-of-bounds area for the player. We can't ever see the view that this screenshot is showing, and it's taken in such a way as to seem almost an accident or a randomly generated image. This is the only thumbnail in the series to employ this type of framing, and I think that's intentional. When we consider the title of the part, Their World, it's not us that's looking at this system of hallways and weird interconnections, it's a world designed by them, and this is what they see. It's hard to pinpoint who they are, but to me I feel like it builds this vision of being in a world that's actively being watched by others. I think this can tie back to the prior chapters and the general sense of unease that comes down with each one. There's this split that happens in the Gates map and the slow degradation from a normal life into fear and loneliness in Epiphanies. The utter hatred and darkness of Vile, and now a slight bounce back to their world. To me, there's an overarching metaphor of loss and depression. We lost somebody, we beat ourselves up for it, we hate it, and we're now paranoid about losing those around us, so we start to become isolated. The world we once experienced together is no longer one we recognize. Sure, there are still people out there, but now we're living in their world, not ours. To get back to some more concrete things inside this level, I do think that they can be interpreted as these floating obelisks. They don't really move, but they do tend to either be in the way, congregated together, or outright blocking things, and their size difference to us is somewhat equivalent to a small child looking up at a grown adult. They tower over us, but not to this blatantly comical degree. To me, they feel like someone that feels untouchable or unreachable. They're stone beings that we fundamentally don't understand how to approach or deal with besides ignoring. One thing I should mention is that they're not entirely silent. Listen to the ambience change here when I walk up to one. There's this foreboding, menacing atmosphere that's exuded from them, and noticeably the doorways between rooms fit them almost exactly. This place is built for those monoliths, maybe even built by them. The rest of the map seems to push this narrative that we're actually an intruder in this space. The shapes we're collecting seem to be tied to that gate as if they're keys. The tool text on the first one calls this barred entrance maintenance tunnels, so it's implied that we're collecting the keys to unlock this gated area. This gate and these keys, combined with a musical shift that happens after you've collected all of them, implies that you're not meant to be back there. It's a forbidden area, even for the normal residents of this place. There are many spaces that we can visually see outside of this grid that we're trapped in, but they're blocked by gray tubular bars. We're navigating a world and trying to progress into its depths, but atmospherically we're discouraged from doing so. The rooms have deadly pits in them, the spaces wind between each other almost nonsensically, and there's plenty of repeat rooms scattered about. Many have these monoliths watching us, placed in inconvenient areas, silently judging. Despite the wandering and the paranoia, this doesn't seem like an accidental journey from a character perspective. It's meant to represent a search of some kind. We're looking for a way to escape this place. And when we do finally find the shapes, find the keys, unlock the gate, and make our way back there to the maintenance tunnels, we get transported to an astronomically large room, barely visible, bathed in near complete darkness. Sure, we can walk around a bit in there and traverse the space super slowly, but the only thing that we can really find is doorways to more darkness and a silence that's eternal. It's a baffling space, but it makes sense when combined with the ending of Vile. It's endless misery, or if you follow part 0, endless comfort. To bring up another tangent here, this space does remind me of another I've heard of. In the book House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielinsky, one of the protagonists goes on a journey through an impossible gray interior space inside of his house. He describes a space they call the Great Hall and notes that its span approaches 1 mile, making it practically impossible to illuminate. The space we get transported at the end is eerily similar to this Great Hall, and I can't help but relate to the madness described by those who traversed it. Massive, silent, uncaring. Another thing I do want to point out that I discovered when messing with my camera to get the out of bounds shot earlier is that there's this shaft that seems to extend endlessly up and down. It implies this unfathomably huge set of spaces where these entities exist. You can even spot a few small glimpses of them on various floors. It's fascinating the scales that we're working with. It's not just a single place, it's an entire city. It follows this running theme of massive scale with us being insignificantly small and alone. We're out of place here through and through. But how did we end up here? What happened so long ago that has us unable to recognize the world we're in? The firmament begins with us on top of a tower, surrounded by cityscapes that are reminiscent of Art Deco depictions of retrofuturism. Personally, it reminds me of classic comic book art like the old Superman or Batman entries. There's a spotlight ahead of us, usually a call to action, and the phrase, "You are the firmament, close the gates for good." This is a direct callback to the original Part 0. It's mentioned directly in both maps. This time, there's a clear goal for the player, to close the firmament, whatever that actually means. Wandering around, we can see that below us are Isharian stairways and paths overlooking another bottomless pit. Roads seem to meander around us, some dissecting with the tower we stand on, and to one side, a series of towers and narrow bridges connects us in the center of this space to the greater city. A lone doorway beckons us, and so we make our way down to it. Entering the doorway, we make our way back from the central tower through the series of covered bridges, one of which is shown to us on the journey overlooking the city. An ambience has seeped in again with this subtle music playing. The city itself seems to be in distress. Are we at war? Are we under a lockdown? Why do we need to close the firmament? Going through the next doorway, we are transported to the bottom of a hexagonal tower. Behind us, an elevator shaft. We've made our way down from the top of the tower we started on. We go through a series of columns vaguely representing a high-rise lobby and a city skyscraper, and exit via a series of hallways with sloped roofs. A familiar entity awaits there to watch us as we leave. They almost feel like watchtowers, cameras, machines that don't really care about us but are keeping track. Nonsensical rooms and perilous pits accompanied by their unnatural yellow glow, and open ceiling to a sickly green-gray light hangs above us. It feels like we're being trapped by the buildings around us, being crushed into nothingness. Eventually, we make our way out of the alleyways and onto the main road. The scale is the first thing that hits. We're very small, and this city is massive. Skyscrapers as far as the eye can see, overpasses, bridges that connect one side to the other, holes in the sides of the structures that appear to be random windows or doorways. The second thing you might notice is that this place is deserted. We're on what should be a split-lane highway. There's street lamps to light it up, and the roads are way too wide to be intended for foot traffic. The concrete walls surrounding us show that this is not meant to be a place where one stops to smell the roses. So, walk down the road we must. Eventually we make our way out of town and see it. The wall from Part 0 stands before us, gate open, button ready to press. And the city lies almost imperceptibly far behind us, a small dot on the horizon at this distance. We're at the very edge of perceiving it. Walking up to the gate, the next is shown distantly, gate closed and wind howling. Attempting to leave gets us blocked. You probably shouldn't go back out there. We have no choice. We must close the gate for good. This is what we were told to do. It's closed, and a finality is shown to us. We rise up to see that this is just the first gate. Then another, and another, and 10 more. The gates go on as far as we can make out on the horizon, their walls stretched out infinitely. We're closing the city off to the outside world. We're closing the firmament. Then, we're teleported to a gray hallway. Text above the doorway. 0552. I really wanted to help you, but I didn't want you to find it. The next room. These gates sever me. The messages are from within. You understand, don't you? Your last hint is here if you still need it. So obviously this text is showing us directly that this map is tied from when the Epiphanies began. It's there to show us how to activate the secret to lead us to the hallways from that map, the button hidden in the menu and the painting where we receive the hint on where to go. This shows that the messages from this area are the same ones intertwined with the ending to that map. The reference to the closing of the gate and the inner struggle to want to help but not being able to, I think this is the character themselves talking to us, the player, about the situation. They don't like what's happened, even if they were the one to close the gates and to cause the issues. They don't want it to be that way, but they're not sure what to do about it. They're trapped inside their own walls. This really helps support the narrative that someone has left them and broken something. They're dealing with an inner depression and don't know how to let it out. They're trapped in a world of nostalgia and comfort, locked down and out of place. The city in this map is impressive and awe-inspiring and implies a huge community that's been abandoned or lost. The fact that this appears to take place at night helps with that perception. This is a place that used to be happy, but it's now in a state of emergency, paranoia, and desolation. The reveal near the end of the walls that lies between the two that you can immediately see before sealing the final one is great at showing how this is an isolated place that's extremely difficult to get into, or in this case, out of. I love the retrofuturism angle that a lot of the architecture has here. The environment wouldn't look out of place in something like a 1930s Superman comic, or for a more recent angle, think something akin to the Jetsons. The black sky and searchlights to me specifically call back to an older incident known as the Battle of Los Angeles. Without getting too deep into the weeds, there was an incident that took place in the middle of the night near downtown LA that involved a lot of military gunfire and searchlights. It was shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor that brought the United States into World War II and has a few rather famous photographs associated with it. You can see the searchlights, and with the context of the war that the US had just entered, it's obvious to connect the paranoia and dread of the incident to the image captured of it. Take that same paranoia and add in a sprinkle of that strange sci-fi B-movie art style that's captured in movies like Flash Gordon or Forbidden Planet, and you have this map. It's certainly a step up from the visuals of the first few chapters, and again helps to build this space that seems huge even if the traversable area is rather limited. The path from the top of the tower to the gate on the outskirts of the city is also one of the more logically consistent paths we've taken since Part 0, and it really pushes forward a singular action-driven narrative. We need to close the gates, and we know how to get there almost from the get-go. It also ties in directly to multiple parts of the series and acts as a guide for those who may have missed some of the fairly esoteric secrets in Part 1. It's a cool way to hide the story behind a series of efforts for those willing to dig into things. But now that the firmament is closed and we are fully trapped in our bubble, where do things go from here? Shape Collector is unique in this series. The thumbnail for the map is really colorful and has a proper title screen. Even the description of the map actually has content in it besides messages from within, subtitle every other map has shown us at this point. Even the level itself starts completely differently from the rest of Oppenheimer's maps. We begin in a sort of lobby area with a start button, emulating times of old where everyone would hang around in a similar space while waiting to join a co-op game. When we do finally hit go, we spawn into a rather basic house with textures that do emulate that PS1 style. A small story plays out in front of you. You are awoken by a terrible noise. Your shelf is broken and your shapes are gone. You've got to get them back. It's simple and easy to follow. We need to get our shapes. Proceeding outside, we have a sign telling us to go to the market, and only one path out of here. A small tutorial on how the shape collection works, identical to that of the previous map, plays out in front of us, and then we officially leave on our adventure. We proceed into a fairly straightforward abstract area called the courtyard area. Some platforming later, we're on to our next, where a toggleable button sits. We puzzle our way through this area as well and move on to the next. This time, a museum lies to a side path, but outside of some interesting art, is really an unnecessary thing to go into to proceed. Once we can collect more shapes, we head to the next area. You wonder where all these purple buildings came from. You don't recognize them at all. In this area, another platforming challenge, and the location from our title screen. Another room awaits, this time with a new gimmick, invisible paths. Puzzling through, we come upon the City Zone. I thought the market was just up here. Maybe I'm misremembering. Was the city always that close? Puzzle, room, clipping into a trash bin? Puzzle, room, telephone poles. Don't make eye contact with anyone for any reason. Puzzle, wait, isn't that room? Invisible floor. Isn't this an entrance? Don't slow down. Puzzle, room, market. But the soundscape goes eerie. The market is large and gray. The telephone poles we saw drop into the abyss, and then, as we approach, we're told to turn back. A familiar opening in the wall greets us. The people are back, and we're reminded that this is their world. We're now in a different kind of puzzle, not collecting the shapes, but avoiding them. We do some basic pathing and go into the next room, vast and angular as the music from their world plays. We're reminded of how stupid we look, and then we're left to solve the next puzzle. After taking a bit to survey the area, a visible black line can be seen jumping from square to square in this weird dance floor. We go ahead and follow it to where it stops and find a secret trigger. Clicking it, we're teleported up to a secret room and given a button to open the next door. Proceeding carefully without touching the people, we get to the next room. The invisible platforms make a return, and the people watch us as we open the door and proceed between them. Finally, success! It's the shelf we set out to get. We go ahead and buy it. And are teleported home. Our shapes are collected, our shelf bought, and our quest is done. What left to do but rest after a hard day's work? Let's go ahead and fire up the old PC. Look, one of our friends is playing a game. Let's join... Oh, okay. Another time then. Let's watch some videos. Man, that shelf was a bit of a task, wasn't it? I'm glad we don't have to do that again. That was harrowing. We end up in an abstract tunnel. We wander around and notice that one of those invisible platforms is above a wall. We go straight through the wall and end up in another gray tunnel. Writing is on the walls. You lay in bed, cowering, like a rat. Nobody is coming to help. It doesn't have to be like this, but you have to get up. You have to call somebody. You aren't going to die here. Go, get the phone. We proceed into a shattered reality of you won't pass these gates. The music swells and we've got a goal: to survive. We make it, and we talk. Waking up in our room again, we proceed outside and see the impossibly tall tower we've escaped from. The pink and green is back, as are the telephone poles, but there's a melancholic aura in the air. It's a new day, and we're alive, and a message from the map creator surfaces. And then appear with a bench. We can overlook on the shadows of distant lands across the lake and soak it all in. The shapes seem so far away. Shape Collector is a journey almost unique to the Messages from Within series. Even from the get-go, it's obvious that this map is made differently and has this air of plastic fakeness to it that is completely foreign to the bleak and heavy atmosphere that every map so far has displayed. The cutesy title screen, the colorful art, and the PS1 game description give this an air of a cult classic video game, or even a forgotten kids game. Without the context of the surrounding chapters, it's almost what I'd consider a bog-standard adventure game built into the framework of VRC. The entrance area is something that I want to contextualize. This is, at least in terms of how VRC story maps are created, a very familiar and standard trope for rounding up your friends before experiencing something together. It's a proper title screen and a lobby waiting area that many mappers enjoy having to help set up the beginning of things. It's a meta space that isn't usually part of the story and is here to give guidance to newcomers on how to best experience things. Usually in these spaces there are messages or images trying to give warnings about things like epilepsy or horror themes, or they're trying to hype you up and get ready for the experience ahead. In that regard, this Lobby area isn't super complex, but it's definitely a standard trope. It's setting the mood that this is an adventure puzzle game to be experienced socially, and that furthermore, this is an adaptation of some classic game, or classic tropes of a game. It's this odd duality between this and the latter half of the experience that's super unique to me. The game lulls you into a false sense of happiness and content. You're just a gamer wanting to play a cute game with a couple of your friends, that's all. But things derail, slowly at first, but there are signs that there's a creeping horror in this otherwise quirky experience. One map design choice that isn't obviously menacing is the museum early on. It's weird to have in a game that seems to be focused purely on puzzle and platforming. It's otherwise a straight shot from room to room, but it can be chalked up to quirky PlayStation storylines. It's just a humorous Easter egg that the devs put in, or some side area that one of the interns made that everyone else loved. But if you enter and pay attention, the art inside is not your standard fluffy happy pieces that you'd expect from a pastel PS1 kids game. It's abstract, it uses odd colors and shapes, it's heavily detailed compared to the rather limited polygonal and untextured feel the rest of the map conveys. There's signs here that go from helpful and straightforward and start to say odd and menacing things. There's errors in the map design. One room has a dumpster with an invisible path above it that you can clip into, unlike any other in the game. There's this wall that lets you slip slightly out of bounds to see our little diamond friend in the background. We show up at a weird exit and have to loop around to read one of the signs. It's odd that a mapper that included such details and mechanics as a collection minigame suddenly has blatant and ominous errors left in like this. There's some poison in the soup. All of this dark undertone gets revealed when we do finally reach the market and the telephone poles that have been following us dip away. Did you notice the framing of it? The market is big, massive even, and is solidly gray and uniform. It's big corporation trademark in a visual format. The signs even beg us not to enter there. I think it's here that we start to learn that the front half of the map has been a lie. Not to the player, but to the designer. This was meant to be a happy quest to the store to get a new thing. But the anxiety of it now, needing to be in a public space and perceived as such, is starting to set in. We have to be seen, we have to be judged. What if that judgment isn't positive? Once we enter, the puzzles continue, but instead of searching for things, we're now avoiding them. Instead of whimsically meandering, we're trying to find the quickest way to get in and get out. As somebody who has dealt with social anxiety and has hated the way that she was perceived for most of her life, I get the feeling it's not pleasant. But we get our objective, we finish our quest, and our reward is to get home and relax. Except once we're there, the stress doesn't subside. We think about hanging out with a friend, but convince ourselves that we'd be a burden. We worry about whether or not the trip to get that stupid shelf was worth it. We worry about our health. It's not normal to be so scared and anxious. We worry about why we're alive, and then we spiral. We think we're gonna die. We're convinced we're gonna die. We've given only one choice: die. I think that this is something that, at the very least, in the context of the map series, is the creator saying that they attempted to end their life. I hope for their sake that this is only part of a meta story that's being told, and it's no more than that, a story. But the good news is that after this attempt, our character wakes up and realizes that it's not what they truly want and that they need help. Go to the phone, call the outside, get a message out that's within. And then we go through that ordeal. We pick ourselves up, and then we use the phone. The ending text implies that this call went to a close friend, and that this map is a way for the creator to show their vulnerabilities. They may not be able to tell someone close, but they can tell somebody unknown. They can shout to the world. They can say something. I hope you're doing okay, Oppenheimer. From one stranger to another. I'm glad to see that this wasn't the end, at least for you. Convergence takes a bit of a step back from the intensity that was Shape Collector. The map is less overwhelming, less structured, and more of an open space to wander through. The beginning room succinctly shows how much different it is from prior entries, with an incomprehensible map and a red "You Are Here" dot adorned on a column. It's being very open about its opaque nature. Because of how open and easy it is to meander from space to space, I don't really know how to describe a proper linear exploration of this map. Because of this, and to try to keep this endlessly ballooning script down a bit, I'll skip a full playthrough of this one and just show off a few of what seem to be relevant areas with my thoughts on their meanings. One notable thing that jumps out at me with this entry is that the dread and the anger from prior ones seems to be gone, or at least dulled. The lifeless gray is still there. There's massive spaces all over the place still, but there's no active malice. There's no vengeful anger to be gleaned from it all. There are glimpses of softness and stability in the gray and monolithic. A tree grows in a white void near a broken bridge in this room. In another, we stumble upon one of those diamonds, earlier described in Shape Collector as an omen, but it's deactivated, and we can hear the sounds of bird calls echoing throughout the massive space. It's empty, but not locked out of time. The diamond remains floating, but I get this sense that it's no longer watching and judging, no longer taking an active role in the space that it resides in. Most of the rooms are barren, but not overtly dark or cramped like many of the previous structures. There's spots to sit and take it all in, spaces that feel safe to just exist in, and a lack of a driving force behind our exploration. It's a reluctant sigh of relief in the series. We crashed and burned in Shape Collector, and we're back collecting our wits in this one. I'm hesitant to call it a map that represents healing, but at least it's one that represents an acceptance of some kind, or at least a step back from the edge. Even the name Convergence seems to imply that it's scattered thoughts and worries and ideas all coming together. It's a silent recollection of the memories that came before and how they've seemed to dull with the passage of time. Former terrifying presences now reduced to that same concrete as everything else. We seem to be alone again in this experience. There's no narrator, no background music, no direction, and no goal, just structures. There are a few spaces that are more reminiscent of classical liminal architecture on display here. There's these massive brutalist rooms of unknown purpose, imposing columns, blinding light, and harsh shadows, and everything seems to be designed to be a hallway to the next space. The barren uniform concrete that we've come to recognize has transformed a bit into gray tiles with a worn texture. There's a distinct aging to the material. The pits and blind corners are here, but their venom and claustrophobia is gone. There's plenty of room to slip past without fear of being sucked in, and the paths seem to be uniform and safe. One of the few items of note to be found is a green pixel in the distance of one of the massive spaces. It reminds me of the traditional green exit signs with the little running stick figure man, but it's impossible to reach or even get close enough to tell what it is. It's just another blip of vagueness, just enough there to wonder what it possibly could mean. In one side path, there's an unassuming room, larger than most standard interior spaces, but nothing out of place in this series. A sign in it indicates that the room is symmetrical, measured down to the centimeter. This place almost reads as a museum of cold indifference. It's art that seems to have been made with the soul drained from the artist. It feels like an author or a person who's still trying to create but can only manage the utterly mundane, the basic concepts of form and the bleakest of colors. Another room nearby holds a statue of the red monoliths we saw in Part 0. The creator seems to refer to them as memoria, sigils of stagnation. It seems that the pain that was caused is still around, but it's dulled. It's something categorized on a shelf in a back room. It's been so long since the gate shut, but there's still a melancholic regret lingering, an idea of decay. Finally, wandering enough, we come across a hallway where it appears we can write messages, or at the very least summon them in. If they make it here, they'll be nearing now. Then this seems overdue. You, I know you're listening. I'll be as direct as is needed. The rest is up to you. This place is everything you see. Miles of empty halls, sinews layered and stretched thin over cavities too deep to ever know. A monument to atrophy. You may have heard it be called the firmament, or ego world. There's something in these spaces that I want. They look like codes, but I call them keys. You'll find out why. Bring them to me, and I'll bring you answers. Though you won't find any in this instance, what you're looking for here is something that resembles an elevator. I don't know what you are, but if this matters to you, I wish you luck. And if you see my subsidiaries, pay them no mind. It's a quest for codes, a quest for answers, the keys to this place, to these places. We need to find the elevator and the keys, and then we can unlock the truth. But before we can even start, we stumble across a statue of the blue box from Part 0. It's just us and it in a dark room. We can read the plaque adorned on it, and finally it's revealed. The epiphanies are thus. The box is not a seal, it's not a person, it's not a living thing. It needs two things: a wall to keep it contained, and a wall to keep you away. The people that helped create this blue box don't care about you. They just don't, and they never will. So leave it behind, bury it, trap it behind gates, shut it behind concrete walls, and let it rot. It will always be there. It always was there. It's never going to leave you, because what it is you. The blue box is you. It's your ego. It's the representation of yourself. And it's one that people in the past and you in the present create. The entire series has been swirling around the concepts of depression, isolation, and trauma. This is what happens when we experience an ego collapse, when we can no longer recognize that which is in the blue box. It's terrifying, it's isolating, it's miserable. We put it behind bars because we want to remove it from our lives, suppress it forever. It's an unrecognizable amalgamation of flesh and bones with tortured memories to us. It's a stain that will last forever and a time that will never come again. But then, someone unexpected comes along and our priorities change. Someone comes and plays our VRChat map and experiences it with joy. They come in, they poke around, they make absurd statements about its contents. They walk through its halls and absorb its narratives. They write down their thoughts, their ideas. They take photos, reminisce, ponder, wonder what it is that was buried. They talk with us, share their experiences with us, make us laugh, make us think, and even make silly little videos about us. Oppenheimer is showing us their fragile ego, fully exposed, and seems to finally be ready to let go of the hate and the misery that's been following them for years. They're ready to accept their fate. They had their blue box, and they trapped it behind their gates. They buried it away, never to be seen again, their memories calcified in concrete. And now they're asking me, Francine, to help get them free again. How can I say no to that? All we need are the keys. With the keys in hand, we have what we need to finish this. We take the elevator up from convergence into atrophy. Down a small hallway of gray, an atrium is shown to us. We're greeted by a code box. Surrounding us are uniquely colored doors. After a brief puzzle of rearranging the numbers we've been given, we enter in the final code. Suddenly, the room springs to life. White beams shooting into the sky, a black pipe flows down, and a ladder comes out of it. We're finally ready to see it, the end of it all. We climb the ladder, walk out of the building, and are greeted once more by the gates. But this time a voice comes with them.
Oh, you're early. Did you like that last room, the carpeted one? Well, I won't hear your answer, but I was experimenting with rooms with visitors in mind. I'm glad you're here. I'm sure you have all sorts of basic questions. You got my messages, didn't you? There's so many things I want to tell you. They're best left unsaid, but Thank you for coming here. Walk with me. There's something I have to show you. These ones were built hastily. Nothing to see. Oh, the last puzzle. Careful, there are angels here too. Best to stick to the road or you might get stuck. Don't worry about solving them. The levels atrophied a long time ago, as well as their gates. But that is, they were stuck shut. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't know why you're here either. You don't belong here, do you? It doesn't bother me any that you are, though. I admit I am sometimes afraid of what you find. Sorry, that was a bit on my mind. Let me try again. I know you and you know me. I noticed you running around here a long time ago. Were you always there? No. I know you were. But I can't remember without you now. You don't look like one of mine. You seem to be able to come and go as you please. Something keeps bringing you back. I can see my rooms haven't been as kind to you. Not that you would appreciate the comforts of a place like this. My concrete meets every horizon. My pipes sprawl, gray. And sometimes when the wind blows and I look down at the sand, it reminds me of the beach. I'm okay with this. Really am. Now I'm just feeling the growing pains of my walls. Oh, but that's not why you're here. You're here for answers. And there's something I need to tell you about the nature of this place. Time exists in patches. I've brought you here to the present, or seconds from it, I don't know exactly. Well, you've been walking on the same path. That first cart at the gates, through the blue and gray halls in the city, to the dock on the lake, to the elevator, to now. All these places are connected from end to beginning. And this path, you never deviated from it, more or less. I know I've had eons to walk the same path as you did, over and over. But they're connected synaptically. They're not connected for you. So, why did you visit these places? And who's been leaving those menus everywhere? Seeing you walk them all made me laugh, actually. And I was given some temporary relief before remembering you can't see me or talk to me. And I can't follow you into some places. Can't follow the road for this one, actually. You have to go under that awning. Sorry. We're getting close now, I think. There's something else. Embedded in some areas on the path, you found the keys. Those codes were illegible to me, numbers that changed each time I looked at them. But when I noticed you writing them down, it made me think something was different about what you saw. So I put a locked door at the end of the path. And I waited, and I watched for you for days, weeks, months, years, centuries. I must have waited 1,000,000 years for it to arrive. No, that's not right. How long have you been coming here? How long have we been walking? Now I see you in my halls in droves, peering over every corner, trying to find something else. You must have walked hundreds of miles. So have I. Trying to find something else, only to find rooms. I must have looked through 1,000,000 rooms. I guess I don't look anymore. How long have you been coming here? Where was I? Sorry, I keep forgetting you can't answer. Well, what you're looking at here is the decision I made. But you know that. I was content to stay forever. But each day since lying to it becomes harder to remember things. Harder to open my eyes. Harder to tell if my eyes are open or closed. My world slips into theirs like a veil. The angels tell me I'll die soon. They love to cheer me up. tell me the first gates can't be opened anymore. This I already knew. I was reluctant at first, but as you traveled further down the path, I guess I felt you should see more. Thank you for bringing the keys, by the way. You've been very helpful. Now, I can show you their real purpose. Nothing happened. It's still closed. Still closed. Where did you go? I can't see you anymore. What does it look like for you? Did you see anything change?
And then we're alone again. We walk for miles and miles and days and years and centuries, and then a red carpet, a stairway. A sky and a sea of pillars. A finale. We've released these messages from within. Except I need to confess that in my bumbling explanation of this series, I missed a few things. I missed a lot, actually. I need to step back and explain a few things and reveal a few secrets. There is a name at the end, Sarah, and there's that coded phrase from the beginning, misery is comfort. There's something that's not adding up. I can feel it. By the way, credits to Justice Lynetta for their video on the entire series. Without them, I would still be lost, and this video wouldn't exist. If you like this series and want an unedited playthrough of the maps, please check out their video. Its guidance is a key to this one being realized. Thank you so much for it. In this series, there are 7 things that I missed in my initial playthroughs that help to tie everything together and reveal to us the secret and proper ending. To cut to the chase, and to avoid drawing this out longer than it needs to be, I'll quickfire a few of these that are either less relevant to the story as a whole or less substantive than the others. The first one is the map Divergence. It's probably the easiest one to stumble into by accident and the least impactful once the entire story is laid before us. It's a world that's entirely eclipsed in darkness, inescapable and empty. I tried walking around in it for a good while, but it truly is nothing on a massive scale. It's an unlisted world, only accessible from you won't pass these gates. Once we go through the main story of that map and are told to leave, if we ignore that advice and then walk forward once more, back to the area where the blue box sat, a private instance portal will spawn in on the spot. I did originally find this back during my initial playthrough, but deemed it not really worth trying to break down, especially when the only other discussions I could find about the world are about how boring and pointless it is. It's there if you really enjoy walking alone in pitch black silence, but I'm going to go ahead and skip it. There's nothing more that it adds to this series that other maps don't already convey. The other secret section I half knew about was the long tunnel in Their World. I even showed a clip of it earlier with me peering into the darkness during the discussion from that map, but I didn't realize that I was really close to accidentally discovering the key from that world through this tunnel. The tunnel itself is probably the actual maintenance tunnel that the world refers to in the tool text on the shapes, but it's very hard to accidentally discover this secret. I believe the intended path to finding this tunnel is to stumble upon a section of wall in one of the rooms that makes a horrible pulsing noise. After completing the shape collection minigame and then going back to that same wall, you get teleported to a massive dark room similar to the ending of Vile with a lit bridge. The bridge leads to a cliff, text in front of us reading, "One held the eye before the fear outgrew its shell. Now I see it more clearly, for better or worse. Since the rebirth, I waited for an answer I knew would never come." The tunnel is also opened after the shape collection, and the phrases "one held the eye" and "waited for an answer" is a bit of a clue that this tunnel is dark and very, 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 very long. In fact, walking a straight path, this takes about 30 minutes at default VRChat running speed to traverse. The key for this map is shown along with some text at the end of this insane tunnel. You found yourself in their world, unsure what to do. You hid, but the longer you hid, the less likely you were to come out. The tunnel is closed now, but that's not a problem. For you, for coming so far. And then our key. While aggressively punishing for the player, it is at least in theme for these maps. It hammers home the theme of isolation that our protagonist went through and tries to show that waiting in the darkness leads to nothing but that isolation. It's unique, but outside the key being placed here and some flavor text to once again push this sense of isolation, there's not much more that it really gives us. The third, Shape Collector, also had in it one thing that I want to go over before we get to the 3 secret rooms and the secret finale. It's not a source of vital information needed to understand the basic story, but it does appear to be more of a substantial source of information than any of the others so far. It fills in some details about the vaguer points of the characters that we've been alluded to. In this world, we're tasked with finding white shapes in each level: a pyramid, a cube, a sphere, and a diamond. What you might have spotted during my discussion section was a blue pyramid placed on top of one of the gates between sections. This blue pyramid is not there by default, and actually having it in shot like this was completely an accident, as I was trying to work my way through the secrets and also record lines along the way. I figured it wasn't worth resetting the map just to not have it there, so I left it and recorded away. To get it there, there's actually a complete separate blue shape collection minigame that progresses as you traverse the level, a new shape in every section. They only spawn in if you find the first, and to do that, we actually need to slip out of bounds in the very first section outside our house. It is quite video gamey to have a secret wall like this, and it's kind of cool to integrate that trope into the concept of hiding the truth in plain sight. The shapes then appear to us in hidden locations for each of the map's sections. A tooltip lets us know that there are 11 in total to find. There's one on a ledge that you can fall into, one locked behind a puzzle gate, one in that museum area, and the triangle on top of the gates that I showed. And then, right before entering the city, a second path opens up where normally a fence blocks us. If we travel back there, 4 of the diamonds surround a blue cube, a door behind it locked with a code box. Skipping over this doorway, as it is one of the 3 secret rooms in this series that I'll discuss in a minute, if we collect the cube, the diamonds deactivate and slam into the ground. A sigil of stagnation slowly rises up from where the cube was. You have obtained a bad memory, it warns us. The door is no longer active and the music turns sour. Once again, we've stumbled into a dark secret here, I feel. With no other place to go, we can head into the city. Another set of blue items is discoverable here. The sphere lies precariously on a pipe in one room, the diamond in the next, hidden atop a wall with a secret path, the pyramid in that dumpster I called out earlier, and finally the cross lies in that out-of-bounds area near another diamond sentinel. Once we finally let the curtain fall and spot the market, the 11th shape is there, a strange sphere with spikes protruding from the bottom of it. It's reminiscent of the red shape seen in Convergence, and despite not really being able to get a good shot of it, it does show up in the secret of their world. It's an odd addition to the standard polygonal shapes we've been collecting so far. It's out of place, and I'd argue intentionally in a spot where it makes sense for it to be, in front of the market in the bad areas. If we collect it, a bonus level is revealed to us, a doorway bored into the side wall. Entering, we find ourselves in a blank fenced-in concrete maze, telephone poles dotting the horizon. There's a few major items to be discovered here, the first of which is the blue box from You Won't Pass These Gates, ominously listed as the 12th shape of 11 to find. Clicking on it unlocks the rest of the monuments in this maze of a space. A total of 6 are available. 7 if you count the dumpster that helpfully lets us know that it's a dumpster. The first of these descriptive statues is a monument of what I've been referring to as diamonds. Angels is what they seem to be called, and according to the text, the space we're in can only be accessed by one of them. We're urged not to find it. This statue helps contextualize what these entities are. They appear to be the masters of the worlds that we're in, not necessarily the narrator itself, but something that influences them and talks to them. I think that the subsequent text referring to the one we're told not to seek out is our 11th shape, the sphere with spikes. My mind wandered here to the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion, where the main antagonists are also referred to as angels. One of these, Ramiel, also appears to be similarly a basic shaped entity that dwarfs us in its size. The angels in this series are depicted as omnipotent beings, hostile to the very idea of humanity at its core, and are seen as something that could wipe out all of us if given the chance. Our superior angel in this series, our sphere with spikes, probably shares a similar distaste towards us and our unnamed protagonist, and these angels are their subsidiaries. In Convergence, the signs that I had assumed to be from our protagonist was most likely our master angel speaking to us, maybe directly, maybe through the protagonists themselves. Another statue in this area depicts the Standard, a white platform. The plaque here tells of the protagonist's reaction to losing that second person and when the epiphanies began. It shows that this death hit them hard and they refused to seek help or guidance from others. They only told the structures that they resided in, and it only caused them to deteriorate as well. They only trust the angels and the firmament to be their anchors. A third statue depicts a window. Our protagonist can see the outside world, the beauty of it lost to them as the pain they've experienced seems to override everything out there. They can see that life is continuing on the outside and ponder on the disconnect between it and them. Life for them, despite appearances, is terrible, and they wonder if there's something wrong with them or if life is truly as meaningless as they see it for everyone else. A fourth statue depicts a countertop. The protagonist seems to lash out in this one, cursing the dead for not helping them before their passing, showing that they've been living in this hell for 15 years. The protagonist shouts at them to laugh at their misfortune, take it all in, and then blames them for all the struggle and all the misery they've been through, their grief overwhelming all logic and emotional turmoil winning out in the end. A fifth statue shows a headstone. The statue in of itself is identical to those in the bleak spaces in Vile and Their World. It describes him, probably our protagonist, or maybe whoever they lost in Epiphanies, showing how the hole we entered there formed and how they saw it for themselves form. We're given a coded hint to use to discover one of the secret hidden rooms with this, standing in the archway of the apartment looking into the kitchen. Putting that aside to discuss later, we can search and find the sixth and final statue. Nothingness. The plaque says that it represents ghosts, and a final message is here, cryptic and probably a hint to the secret codes we discerned in You Won't Pass These Gates. And then we're free to leave. But the door we entered this space in is gone. A massive path is in its place. We run and run, and behind us, we see them, the ghosts. Massive and gray, now distant as we flee their shroud. But they are not to be feared, not like what appears in front of us. The spiked sphere, gray and monolithic, shudders into view, completely engulfing the sky. Our superior angel has arrived. And then we leave, and are free to continue on to the rest of Shape Collector. The secrets revealed here are numerous and esoteric, but the general vibe is that this is a raw look into the psyche of the protagonist and an explanation of all the symbols and shapes that we've seen throughout the series. The angels, the spiked ball, and the ghosts are all physically present in these worlds. They're entities that try to represent fear, agony, uncertainty, and force. They're not something that can be seen in the real world, but they're all too common in this ego world. And then there's hints about the story. We're revealed a spot to stand to find a secret in Epiphanies, where the spiral begins. We're shown that the blue walls and the dark skies are from the protagonist espousing their pains to these walls, and that they've lived with this darkness and sadness and guilt for 15 years of their life. We're shown that the physical state of the world outside differs from the protagonist's mental state. We're shown that they're unwilling to seek help and that the past consumes them. We're shown that there's still a bad memory that sparked all of this. We're shown that there are still secrets. We were given direction to a secret room in Epiphanies and discovered another in Shape Collector. A third is hinted at near the ending of Atrophy's normal ending with the white square on the bus stop. We're 3 secrets away from finding the final story. If we start in Epiphanies and stand where we were guided to in Shape Collector's bonus room, watching over the kitchen, a pillar of white will appear in front of us. A doorway. Inside is a wall of text reading, "Why were the walls built?" The ghosts will tell you at the 3rd gate. When you find his grave, tell me his name and I'll let you into his room. We know the reason why the walls were built. Now we just need to find his grave. In Shape Collector, if we ignore the blue square where we obtained our bad memory and instead go to the doorway behind it, we can see the code box asking a simple question. Why were the walls built? Well, the walls were built because misery is comfort. The wall descends and allows us to pass. Broken levels with muted green and deep purple greet us. Items flicker and barren rooms lead us from doorway to doorway. And then we see a name written on a wall. No, on a headstone. Bandit. Bandit is our spark. They're the one that left and began our main character's descent into isolation, meaning that our protagonist, as mentioned in Atrophy's ending, must be Sarah. This is Bandit's grave. This is where he was buried, and this is the bad memory that we obtained. After this sequence, we can continue on with the map as normal, but no further changes happen. If we then take this knowledge and take it back to the Epiphany's secret room, we can enter his name into the code box, and we're allowed access into his room. The wall descends. A familiar white tree sits at the end of a ledge. A sunset warms us. This is what Sarah has left behind. We can see that this is one of the few good memories that she still has. This is a comfortable space for her. Sarah speaks directly with us in this infinite room. When do you stop dreaming of someone you know you'll never see again? At what point do you forget the dead? Have you seen them lately? She's still haunted by him, but her memories are failing, rotting, broken. She knows the sadness, but she doesn't know the source. She thanks us for coming, even if she's scared of what emotions she's spreading and is uncertain of why we're even here. She's lived in misery, and she's kept the good times hidden away because they only lead to the bad ones. She's lost her bandit. The final secret is shown to us at the end of Atrophy. Did you notice when we unlocked the gates that we left our protagonist behind? Despite all our puzzles and all our theories and all our determination, she's still locked behind the gates. And when we went to unlock them, there was a key missing. The leftmost slot of the 6 was never filled, never unlocked. And the bus stop had another puzzle diagram on it, different from the one we used all that time ago. We're missing a key. The gates didn't unlock for her because they were never truly unlocked. Part 6, Convergence. A room with an altar in the center, a distinctly human shape resting on it, with thrones as described in the Museum of Shape Collector above it. Our third secret lies here, and our final key is waiting to be found. If we follow the map given to us, the triangle representing the doors that we enter the room in, on the altar, another code box sits silently, asking only a single, simple question. What is your name? Sarah. We've been playing the part of Sarah this whole time, walking the halls of the firmament, discovering our pasts and our fears. We enter in her name, and a room opens for us. A cavernous space greets us. A demonic tower in the center stretches towards the sky. A cold wind blows around us, and a cable stretches out from the doorway we entered all the way to the center. An evil red glow emanates from the tower as a mystical track plays in the background. Proceeding along the path, we can see data terminals are dotted along its sides. A machine registers our presence. It asks us if we remember this place. It tells us that the tower in the center has been constructed from pain. It tells us that it was made when Sarah was only 5 years old, and that it was made because of the box we saw in Part 0. It tells us that her family tried to help her and that they loved her, but that in the end, love couldn't change the way things were. It tells us that it helped her to see how the world truly is, and that it helped her to construct the walls and keep her and everyone else away from the box. It tells us that she survived only because of its help, and then it calls to us to respond. The tower shudders and groans, mechanical sounds bellowing from its depths, and the terminal realizes that we are not her. We are not Sarah. It tells us to leave. It tells us we've been lied to. The keys are not the truth. They're just a distraction. They're just a way to keep Sarah safe from the agony and the pain of the past. It tells us that she isn't well. It tells us that she exists in this world, but rots in the real one. It tells us that this is the only way to keep her alive. The key in the box is her only thread to this reality, and she is the one who put it there. She knows that she and it are completely intertwined. It tells us that we're going against her wishes being here, trying to free her and know the truth. It tells us that we must go and we must carry the burden of removing this key. We must do this despite the firmament's command, despite the consequences, and despite the pain that it will cause. And then we're left to continue to the tower, the pulsing sounds of hatred and mechanics bellowing before us as it grows louder and louder as we make our approach. We enter and are guided through an antechamber, vast, stark, and white. The bellowing machine is drowned out by a complete silence. And then we come upon the final room. Crammed with angels, a throne sat upon a counter. The white bars, the prior keys surrounding it. A memory sits in front of it, guarding the space, and a powerful choir sings to us in this sacred space. Ghosts surround the raised pillar, and paths lead up to it. Climbing up these paths, we see the box, and it opens. We only have one choice: to enter. We're moved to a street in a city vaguely reminiscent of the firmament. It's nighttime, and the only light afforded to us is the street lamps. A distinct urban wind blows past us, and a door at the end greets us. Entering, we're met with a series of blank carpeted rooms. The pyramid from their world spins here, and a tooltip shows us a message. Sarah. A cube frantically paces back and forth at the end of a hallway nearby. Me and your mother love you very much. A sphere presses up against the corner of the ceiling, and another desperately attempting to leave. You need to tell us about things like this. A diamond trembles in the initial room. There was nothing to say. She's in the bathroom. The box lies on the counter. A button is presented. Tear it out. The machine halts. A nearby sign lets us know that its process is finished. This place is now our memory. And then we leave. We've gutted the memory that started all this, and it keeps everything we see here alive. Sarah is no longer tethered to it, and we now have the keys to finally open the gates. We have the ability to end this. This is a story about Sarah. It's only a story, but its messages are real. Sarah was a young girl, no older than 5 years old, and living in the city with her mother and father. She also had one more family member living with her, her pet dog Bandit. She had known him her entire life, and he was her best friend in the cold city. All her memories of him were the best that she had ever had, and she was glad to spend nearly every night playing with him. But one night, when she got home with her parents, she decided that she wanted to be the one to feed Bandit tonight. She thought about what to give him as a treat, and saw that her mother had picked up some of her favorite chocolate. She wanted to share it with him, so she opened a package and gave him a whole bar. Bandit was Sarah's favorite, and she wanted to make sure he had plenty. That night, Bandit woke her and her parents up in howling pain. He was crying and vomiting, and Sarah and her parents couldn't seem to do anything to help. Her dad took Bandit and left to get him to a vet to see what they could do. He returned hours later, alone. Bandit was nowhere to be found. They sent Sarah to bed, but she couldn't sleep without knowing where Bandit was. She listened into their conversation and overheard what her father said. "He didn't make it to the vet," he said. "They told me he probably had gotten into something he shouldn't have. They said that he had found some chocolate on his teeth." Sarah broke down sobbing when she heard this. She had been the one to kill him, and she had caused him, her only friend, such pain and grief and terribleness. She ran into the bathroom and locked the door, sobbing and crying. Her parents found her and tried to console the girl and teach her a lesson that they needed to be told when these things happen, but she had no words to respond with but tears and wails. After hours, her parents left her to be, let her cry herself out while they went and discussed what they were going to do about the vet bill. Locked in the bathroom, she told the walls about what happened and the fear and the pain that she felt. She prayed that she wouldn't have to share this pain, that she wouldn't have to harm anyone else with the knowledge and the images that she saw, and that she wouldn't have to remember what she did. And somehow, her prayers were answered. A god, the firmament, promised to help her. They promised to help her take that memory and bury it in a box and trap that box behind gates. They promised to give her a standard outlook on life, away from Bandit, away from these pained memories. And Sarah accepted their terms. She was given the standard, shown the true way that the world works, and stripped of the memories of her dog. But the firmament did not understand the flesh of the humans. They stripped the bad memories, but they also stripped the good. Sarah could no longer feel anything. She could no longer understand the happiness and the sadness of life anymore. And she grew up with this knowledge. She saw the world for what it is, a gray, lifeless machination where some creatures live and some creatures die. She learned that love was a meaningless emotion that did nothing to solve the problems she faced, and she learned to hide away when emotions ran high. She learned to run away and isolate herself. And she grew up like this for 15 years, emotionally dulled and unable to feel. But then one day, another thing happened. Her parents divorced, her father and her mother unable to keep things together. Their little girl had grown up, and they had grown bitter towards each other. Her father left, and then the epiphanies began. The memories were breaking through the firmament. Her emotions were finally catching up to her, and she finally hit a breaking point. She left our world, but with the standard and the firmament, she was tethered to theirs. This is her story, but this is not its end. We now hold her fate in our hands, and we are asked if we want to free this trapped soul. In Atrophy, we can return and enter in the same code as before, but with the addition of the new one discovered at the end of the Secret and Convergence. We're immediately teleported to the open gates, the theatrics skipped over, and the air thick with a pink fog. Walking forward, the embedded text is gone, a text box greeting us. Sarah speaks directly to her parents here. She tells them she worries about meeting her own demise soon. Because of this, she wrote down her story in books. There are 7 of them, 7 parts. She tells them of her childhood and the way that she saw things in her sleep, in the darkness. She tells them of how she left for a month. She tells them of her memory of Bandit and his grave. She tells them that she will never see it again. She tells them that she loves them, but she doesn't understand why they don't see the way things are the same way that she does. She tells them that she wants to remain hidden because that's how she was taught to be. She lets them know that she had a friend on Discord. She tells them that their name was... And then she turns and speaks directly to us. She lets us know that she is everything that we have seen. She is everywhere in this space. She lets us know that she is aware of what we've done and what we've seen. She hopes we found our answers. She lets us know that we haven't changed anything. This story is already written after all. She knew we would find the messages. Otherwise, why would she have written them? She made up the keys to try to make us understand the story. She thought it would help her feel better, but she concedes that she can't make us understand. It is an impossibility after all. She's content with what happened. It's already done. She wants to blame something, but knows that she is just herself, no more. And she tells us that despite our intentions, there was nothing we could do for her. She tells us not to feel sorry. She's where she belongs. She thanks us for trying, though. Then she shifts her message. It may be too late for her, but it shouldn't be for us. Nobody's gonna come and magically help us out of the predicaments that we're in. We have to do it ourselves. She knows the agony. She understands that we're alone in our own heads and that every bit of it matters, no matter how trivial we try to convince her it is. She tells us that the sadness and the anger feeds in on itself until there's nothing left but you and your memories. And sooner or later, even those will fade away. She tells us to promise to be better than her. I promise, Sarah. I will get this door open, and I will speak these messages from within. And that's the Messages from Within series. I hope that if you're still here listening or watching, that I helped to impart the wonder and awe that I felt when experiencing them for the first time. I also hope that my explanations of the story that I was getting from the maps made sense. This was a hell of a project undertaking for me, and something of a first in my life. I again do recommend that you go play them yourself, or at least watch Justice's playthrough videos and come to your own interpretations on the story. Despite the amount of time that I put into this video and effort that I put into exploring these maps, I almost guarantee I still missed some things or misinterpreted some stuff. I'm not the authority on what this experience means to people. I also want to stress that I genuinely do not know J.R. Oppenheimer and have not directly interacted with them outside of joining their Discord after finally finishing the maps. This was a World Series that I found through happenstance, and I can't be certain their headspace when creating this art. I do think, despite some implications near the ending sequences, that this is merely them telling a story and creating a detailed experience in VRC. And I hope that Sarah is nothing more than a character in that story. I'm glad that they made it in the way that they did, and I'm glad to have stumbled upon it, completely blind all those years ago. I definitely fell in love with these works, and I hope they continue to create and connect. Their worlds outside this powerhouse series also have some great nuance to them. I'm a fan of the house at the edge of Oblivion if you want something a little less monolithic to run around in and check out. But yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble about Niche Strange Worlds for like 2 hours. God, I didn't mean for this video to balloon like it did. When initially writing the script for it, I thought I was going to struggle to even reach 20 minutes. But I just couldn't get enough of this series. I kept adding, and suddenly here I am, 3 years later, with such an astounding appreciation for all of the small things that I combed over. I hope to do this again someday, maybe not immediately, but I do have a few ideas for videos that hopefully won't be as massive as this one ended up. Regardless, creators, keep making weird maps. You never know who might end up enjoying them and making hours-long video essays about them. I've been Francine, and thanks for joining me in the digital world. I hope you enjoyed these messages from within. Cheers!